Today's lesson is on public versus private goods. So, characteristics of goods. Goods can be excludable. So excluding somebody from having a good, what do you think the main way you can exclude somebody from having a good is? Yeah.
There be some sort of cost?
Yeah, there's a price for it, right? People can be prevented from using a good if they can't afford it, if they don't buy it. Okay, and then goods can be rival. Rival means that my use of a good diminishes another person's ability to use it. Okay? Excludable and rival are the two characteristics of goods we will use to determine what kind of good they are. There are 4 categories of goods. Private goods. Private goods are both excludable and rival. Private goods, both excludable and rival. Most goods are private. Okay? Most goods are private. And then we talked about the most common way to make a good excludable is its price. An example of a private good is an ice cream cone. There's a price for the ice cream cones. I've got to pay to buy it. So that's the excludable part of it. And the rival part of it is that if I'm eating an ice cream cone, unless I'm sharing it with my girlfriend, I'm probably not going to let someone else eat off the ice cream cone. My eating it takes away from anyone else eating it, right? I'm the only person that's going to use it. Public goods. Public goods are neither excludable or rival. Neither excludable or rival. An example of a public good would be a tornado siren. When a tornado siren goes off, you're not paying to hear the tornado siren, whether you live in that area or not. I mean, ultimately, people pay taxes to pay for the tornado siren, but anybody that's in the area hears it. Okay, whether they're a taxpayer in that area or not. And my hearing the tornado siren doesn't stop Brody from hearing it, right? We don't take away from each other hearing this noise. So a tornado siren is an example of a public good. A third category of goods is common resources. Common resources are rival, but not excludable. Rival, but not excludable. So my using it stops someone else from using it, or takes away from someone else using it, but there's no cost to it. Example is fish in the ocean. Okay? A lot of fishing goes on in the ocean, and you hear about overfishing. If I'm catching a lot of fish, and we do this over a long period of time, then the fishermen, they're going to diminish the supply. They talk about Atlantic cod that's being overfished, that eventually it won't be sustainable and we won't be able to eat those or catch Atlantic cod because they're being fished out. That's the rival part of it. The excludable part is, pretty much anybody that wants to go out and fish for Atlantic cod can, right? I'm sure there are limits, some type of limits or some type. There may be, licensing fees or whatever, but in a general sense, you're not excluded from fishing. Natural monopoly is the 4th type of good, and it's excludable, but not rival. Excludable, but not rival. Natural monopoly. Example of a natural monopoly is the fire department. Okay, the White River Township fire department doesn't have to if there's a fire in Perry Township, they don't have to go and put out the fire there because people aren't paying in Perry Township aren't paying for White River Township. So because they only put out fires in the area that their taxes support, they exclude out of other areas. So they're excludable, but they're not rival. Usually if there's a fire in White River Township, right, there's not too many fires going on at once, so there's usually enough firemen and fire trucks that can go to put out the fire. And they may come from several fire stations to put out the fire. There's usually never a shortage of firefighters to put out a fire. And in reality, the neighboring districts do help each other. If there were a big fire in Perry Township and there was nothing going on in White River Township, I'm sure that the White River Township Fire Department would go and help out if needed. Okay? All right. So more about public goods. So we've got some examples here. Tornado siren, national defense, okay, is a public good. If there's a war, we don't have to pay money for them to defend us, and they don't defend just certain parts of the United States. They defend us all. Uncongested, non-toll road. Okay, why would I say uncongested? What does that allude to? The uncongested part of it. What's that? Yeah, but I mean, as far as the terms of what we're talking about, how we define the goods. Uncongested addresses what? Right. It's not. There's no rivalry. Non-toll. What does that address? Exclusion. Right. Uncongested non-toll road is a public good. Fireworks, okay, are a public good. When they launch the fireworks at a park or off downtown, off of one of the buildings on the 4th of July, it's free, and my seeing it doesn't stop someone else from seeing it. Everybody gets to see it. Fireworks could also be a free rider. The free rider aspect. Let's say the Indians at an Indians game. After the game, they're going to have fireworks, right? So, in that sense, if it's for the people at the Indians game, in that sense, it's sort of excludable. But if you live in an apartment complex by Victory Field and they do the fireworks, you can see them too. And you didn't pay to get in the game, so that's a free rider. When you get the benefit of a good without having to pay for it. Can you guys think of any other public goods? Examples of other public goods. Can you think of any? Doesn't cost anything. It's not rival. Can you think of anything else? Any other ideas? Okay, we'll go with these then. Free rider, again, a person who receives the benefit of the good and avoids paying for it. Also, free riders are common, like with life insurance. If you buy a life insurance policy and you have children, they get if a child passes, they're covered under the life insurance policy as well. These stop public goods from becoming private, right? Government pays for many public goods that a private market could not produce at an efficient quantity of its own. National defense is probably the best example of this. There'd be no way for us to have a private national defense, right? It costs too much, and it's too hard to coordinate. It's one large country having our defense. That's the best way as a public good to have national defense. Okay, more on common resources. So what is a common resource? What are the characteristics of a common resource? Yes?
Non-excludable but rival.
Non-excludable but rival. Can you think of examples of a common resource? Any examples you can think of? Not excludable. There's no price to it, but it's rival. Any examples? Okay, here are some. Clean air and water, right? There's a limited amount of, of clean water. I don't know how clean air would be rival, except that just different areas have it, so it'd be rival to live in that area. A congested road. Congested means that that my using the road limits or slows down someone else using the road, even though you don't have to pay to be on the road. Fish, whales, and other wildlife, right? There's no cost to enjoying those things, but there are a limited number of them if they're being, hunted or fished. Okay. Tragedy of commons. The tragedy of commons is the absence of incentives to prevent the overuse and depletion of a commonly owned resource. Again, this is a good example of this is fishing in the ocean fishing. Okay, they're overfishing cod, tuna, things like that. Okay, and what's going to happen is that the catch won't be sustainable, and eventually those species won't be able to be harvested for food because we're overfishing. Okay, let's graph the sustainable catch versus the number of boats. So that looks like, if we graph that, it would look like if we had the y-axis as the sustainable catch, and the x-axis is the number of boats. Then that's what that graph looks like. What does this tell us? Interpret the graph. Somebody interpret this. Yeah, what do you think?
If you don't have enough boats, you're not going to catch them in, and if there's too many boats out on the water, you're also not going to be able to catch them.
Yeah. So, yeah, a moderate amount of fishing or boats is the best way to make a sustainable catch. Too few boats, we're not catching enough to provide for the market. Too many boats, we're overfishing. We can't, the number of fish go down, available go down. Okay? All right. How to determine which public goods the government is to fund. We can do that with what's called a cost-benefit analysis. A cost-benefit analysis is a study that compares the cost and benefits to society of providing a public good. What do you think the weakness of a cost-benefit analysis would be? What would be the weakness of a cost-benefit analysis? Say they were going to build a road. right? They're going to build a road. What would be the weakness of that study? Yes.
Giving a number shows a benefit to society.
Yes, it's hard to quantify benefit. Cost, yeah, you can figure, it's going to take X amount of materials, X amount of workers, X amount of time, and this is how much it will cost. That's quantifiable. Benefit is hard to quantify because it's based on people's, maybe a survey, right? And people aren't always honest or don't always give their true feelings in a survey and that type of thing. So it's hard to quantify benefits. That's the weakness. The efficient provision of public goods is more difficult than private goods because private goods use price to determine who gets it, to allocate it. Public goods, there's no cost to them, so it's difficult to be efficient with those. All right. Any questions on the notes?